All right, hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Deep Dive with the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, or RICI for short. We are a grassroots nonprofit with the mission of combating anti-Semitism, educating about Israel, and strengthening the alliance between the U.S. and Israel. This podcast, Deep Dive, is exploring issues shaping Israel, America, Rhode Island, and the future of Western civilization at large. It's hosted by me, Maria Friedman, Executive Director and RICI, and our aim is to bring clarity to complex topics so that you have the knowledge and confidence to engage in informed discussions. And it's named appropriately Deep Dive because we like to go deep into these issues and really understand them from all perspectives. So, with that, I'm very pleased to welcome our special guest today, Rabbi Cary Kozberg of Temple Shalom in Ohio, and he's also the founder of Mattathias Project, which brings together pro-Israel advocates from across the country to share ideas. And so, welcome, Rabbi Cary.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. So first, yeah, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you become a rabbi? What is it that you do with Mattathias
Yeah,
Project?
sure. Um, I'm originally from Houston, Texas. Raised in a what I would call a mixed marriage. My dad came from an Orthodox home. My mom came from a home where there was no Judaism practiced. Um, and I would say I was raised as a passive conservative Jew. Had bar mitzvah, was confirmed, liked it, didn't fight it, but didn't feel the need to pursue it after confirmation. Always wanted to go into the health professions, either depending on the year, it was either a doctor, a dentist, a vet, whatever. My high school studies were focused on that. My freshman year of college was basically science. And of course, getting into medical school, particularly at the University of Texas, which I had always dreamed of doing, you had to have a great grade point average. Okay, so I was attracted, not surprisingly, to courses that were easy. It would be an easy A. One of the courses I took was a history of the Jews in Spain, and the professor was very easy. He was trying to build up the attendance and the department itself. And basically, to be insured of an A, you had to write a paper and come to class. Okay, so I decided to write my paper on Maimonides as a physician. And what I
Wow.
knew about Maimonides, the Jewish philosopher, was that he was a rabbi, a doctor, philosopher, and his picture was on the Hebrew school notebook that I had when I was about 9 years old. That was my sum total. Okay. So in doing research, I started reading some of his philosophy, which was obviously in translation. Now, I'm a child of the 60s. Okay. And this was the year 1969, 70. And there was a lot of stuff going on in the world, particularly in this country. And some of the things that I read that he had written about 900 years ago really resonated with me. And so I went to see my rabbi, and my rabbi suggested that I take a summer course at the Jewish Theological Seminary in the summer of 1970, which I did. It changed my life. I changed my major and entered the rabbinate.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
And for those who don't know, Maimonides is, I would say, one of the most cited
yeah,
rabbis and Jewish scholars from the past. He's definitely in the top three, um,
definitely.
if not the most. So that is such an amazing place for inspiration. And tell us a little bit more about like what is Mattathias Project? Why did you found it, and what impact do you think you're having?
Maria, it's totally been an accident. It kind of evolved on its own. It started as a follow-up discussion from um, a Zoom program that someone had about 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't even remember who exactly it was, but there were people from all over the country. And when the program ended, I basically shared in the chat, does anybody want to continue the discussion? And I got about six replies, yes. So we set up a time to follow up, and it didn't end. And those people invited those people who invited other people who invited other people. So 5 years later, we have about 130 members across the country, and actually a couple in Canada. We meet pretty much every Sunday night on Zoom. We usually have speakers. Um, we've had congressmen, senatorial candidates, people from Israel, American Jews. We've had a couple of people who are experts in current in geopolitical affairs, particularly a woman by the name of Claire Lopez, who's an expert on Iran. She's spoken to us several times. And one of our members, Rabbi Jonathan Hausman, who I have to mention because he's been the matchmaker for a lot of these speakers we've had. He has a tremendous um, connection with a lot of different people, and he's really been the person that has facilitated a lot of these great speakers we've had. And again, folks, not everybody participates, but we have a lot of folks on our email list. We do not have a website. We've kind of kept it grassroots. But anybody who wants to attend is certainly welcome. Most of the folks are Jewish, not all of them are. Many of the people who uh, began because, I mean, wanted to join because they themselves were politically conservative, supportive of Israel. They were members of synagogues that were not politically conservative at all. They were pretty far to the left, and their support of Israel was kind of iffy. Some of these people were actually asked by their rabbi to resign. Okay,
Wow.
they were told you're basically not welcome here, which is, I mean, that makes my head explode. Uh, and they found that basically a lot of them said to us at the beginning, I thought I was the only one. I
Hmm.
thought of all the people I know, I thought I was the only one. And now I've met other people around the country in the same position. So this has really been a support group and an educational group.
Wow, that's remarkable. I think that is
Yeah, the
so
name
important.
Mattathias actually comes from obviously the hero of the Hanukkah story, because Mattathias was the person who stopped the decline of Judaism in the face of Hellenistic culture. Okay, and that's kind of what we're facing now, a decline of Judaism in the face of a modern Hellenistic culture.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, what you just said, though, first of all, if we can't have like freedom of expression of different viewpoints in our sacred spaces, such as synagogues, right? That's just so sad to me that we're seeing this increased ostracization, I guess, or
Yeah,
polarization,
a lot of it
right?
has to do with the 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 education of the leadership. The leadership is are products of the American education system from, elementary through junior high, high school, college. People don't learn to think. They don't learn to think critically, to engage in dialectic. Okay, if they've learned somehow that if someone disagrees with you, you shut them down. Okay. And that's it's happened to me several times. It's very hard to engage other Jews, and I'm actually also talking about rabbis. I've been in conversation with rabbis who have said, "Conversation over. I'm not talking about this anymore." Okay, which I've always said, if the rabbis of old had had that attitude, where we're not going to discuss this, the Talmud itself, which is about 20 volumes as I'm looking on my shelf, the Talmud would be about 45 pages.
Right. Yes. If there's no dissidence, that's not good. And it's kind of leading into my next question is I know that you yourself actually left the Reform movement. You started
Correct.
out as a Reformed rabbi. So can you tell us, why you left and what's happened since?
Yeah, the reform movement that I joined, I said I was raised pretty much as a conservative Jew. I always was and still am very much committed to Jewish tradition. And the Reform movement, Reform Judaism, when I was in seminary, was much more open. It was starting to re-embrace tradition and ritual. And I was taught that a Reform Jew is an informed Jew. And there are many ways of expressing that. In my class, there were students who had grown up in classical Reform synagogues. They didn't wear a kippah, they didn't wear a tallis, they didn't do anything. And then we had people like me who wore a kippah, kept kosher, kept Shabbos, put on tefillin in the morning. Okay, and it was a wide range. Okay, and if we discussed things, it was always with respect. Um, the movement now isn't that way. It's very much influenced by political progressivism. It's very politically correct. Um, Conversations that challenge that, as I said, are pretty much shut down, and it's very doctrinaire. It used to be an open tent. Now I call it a cement bunker.
And like, was there, I guess, a specific breaking point or catalyst for you leaving, or was it kind of just this gradual shift that you
I
saw
would
that
say it was gradual, but it really started when the seminary started to entertain ideas about admitting individuals who were in relationships with non-Jews, and that was going to be okay. Now that's actually been the case now, and with other non-Orthodox seminaries. I just think that's a real dangerous approach, particularly in the times we're living in.
right?
Um,
We're
I
definitely facing, increased assimilation, which could honestly extinct the Jewish
yeah,
population if we're not careful.
I'm a big student of the New Testament. I teach a class on Tuesday afternoons about the New Testament from a Jewish point of view. And I often say that we're living in a kind of a parallel time. We're living in an open society. We're living in a time when there were many Judaisms. Um, and the fact that the Reform movement has moved into this place where what it really believes is political progressivism with Jewish flavoring. Okay. Um, Not really affirming any divinity, any sense of commandment. People do what you do what you want. Autonomy is paramount. In a lot of ways, it's like how the Jews of the early church, the followers of Jesus, started to change their understanding of Judaism. Okay. There's a quote in the letter to the Galatians that Paul says, there is no Jew, there is no Greek, we are all one in Christ Jesus. Okay. I think the paraphrase today is among the progressive Jewish movements, there is no Jew, there is no non-Jew, we are all one in social justice.
Hmm. And isn't there, I forget the exact name, but isn't there like some type of council of reform synagogues? It's like a nationwide
Yes, the Union of Reform
organization.
Judaism.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like they seem to just be a political platform more than anything.
You know,
Um,
there used to be a joke, there used to be, and it was a joke, that Reform Judaism is the Democrat political agenda with holidays.
mm.
That's not really a joke anymore.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And I will say, Ricky, we are a nonpartisan organization. We don't endorse candidates. We have supporters across the
Right.
political spectrum. But I think you're talking about a larger issue where when you start mixing politics and religion, it's a slippery slope. And then you get situations like we were just talking about
Right.
where people get ousted or even kicked out of their own synagogue because they don't have the same political beliefs as the rabbi or the leadership or the people
Right.
with power in the synagogue, and they just shut down really important conversations about all topics, but especially something as important as Israel and Zionism, right?
Sure.
That's our ancestral homeland and our claim to self-determination in our own homeland, right? If we can't even agree on that, I think it's a slippery slope. I mean, have you seen? I don't know if there's actual statistics showing this, but have you seen from your experience that there is higher rates of anti-Zionism in the reform
Oh,
movement
no question.
compared to,
No
I mean,
question. It's a real challenge now.
hmm
In fact, there's a group of Reform clergy, rabbis and cantors who have started a group called Recharging Reform Judaism in response to this anti-Zionist direction
hmm.
that the movement itself has taken. Um, Question that's arisen, is it going to be a real break off, or are they really going to try to stay and reform the reform movement itself?
Hmm.
I think the jury's out on that right now.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what will happen. I know locally here in Rhode Island, we have had our own challenges with the reform movement and have not been successful in being able to partner with them and find common
Right.
ground. I feel like the dialogue has been shut down. And so that's
Yeah.
been such a shame because we do want to work with um, we work with people of all faith backgrounds. We work with Christian groups, we work with atheists, anyone, as long as they are interested in learning about Israel and supporting our fight to combat anti-Semitism, they are welcome to join us, participate in our events, but it has been particularly
Yeah.
challenging with the Reform
Yeah.
movement. So
The, the
I
younger, the
applaud you
younger,
for taking a stand. I mean, you have values and you have a backbone, and that led you to leave and go against the grain of the place you were swimming in, so to speak, and you've kind of charted your own path.
right now, to be sure, I am the rabbi part-time of a synagogue that is officially Reform. It belongs to the Reform movement. It's the congregation that I first served when I got out of seminary back in the 70s. Okay, that's important because at that time, the synagogue wanted to stay classical reform, but the movement itself was moving toward more tradition. Okay.
Right.
So, the rabbi wearing a kippah was people weren't comfortable with, but they allowed it. Okay.
Interesting.
Having a basket of yarmulkes out was not okay. Okay. At that time, men on the holidays were bareheaded and didn't wear a talit. Okay. Fast forward 50 years or so, okay, this past holiday season, almost all the men were wearing yarmulkes and all the men were wearing taluses, okay,
Good.
which tells me that the congregation now is very heterogeneous. It's not homogeneous, number one. Number two, back in the day when I was first there, there was a fight, not a fight, it was policy for this synagogue not to display an Israeli flag.
Oh,
Okay. And I will tell you that policy was in force until about 8 years ago.
wow.
And the reason it changed is because all of the old timers were no longer with us. The
Oh.
ones that really resisted and didn't want to be accused of dual loyalty, they were gone. They had passed away. Okay. So we brought it to a board, we brought it to a congregational meeting. Should we have an Israeli flag now? It was unanimously passed. So now we
Good.
do.
Thank God. Yeah, because that's also been an issue at some of our local synagogues. I won't again name which ones, but some of them, the rabbis will not put up Israeli flags, right? Because they say it
So
could
let me ask
alienate
this.
someone.
Let me ask this question. In any of those synagogues, are there gay pride flags?
Yes. Yep. Or
There you
gay,
go.
gay pride programming or even in
There you
email
go.
signatures, but
Makes
then they
makes my
do.
point. That's
Yes.
that's progressivism is the religion of the modern reform movement.
Right. And that's so dangerous. And so I wanted to go into like Jews protecting themselves because I know this is a topic that you're passionate about. You've had different experts also come and speak to the Mattathias Project folks about this, but how can Jews protect themselves in this day and age, especially with increased Jew hatred out
Yeah,
there?
there's a lot of opportunity. One of the things I've been pushing locally, and I'm getting resistance, is the local federation facilitating, encouraging, sponsoring, whatever, however you want to call it, programs for individual Jews to learn how to protect themselves. Okay, either with unarmed self-defense, like Krav Maga, and or with firearms and bladed weapons. Okay, not everyone should be carrying a firearm. That okay, but those people who are able to and who want to do it for the right reasons should be encouraged. Right now, the focus is on protecting our institutions, our buildings. Okay, not at all on teaching individual Jews how to protect themselves, God forbid, if something happens. Now, we know that around the country, um, Jews are being attacked. All you have to do is look what happened in Colorado several months ago. Okay, those people were not in a building; they were outside. Okay, uh, last week, I think during Passover, a gentleman was walking with his family and was hassled by someone. He was afraid for his family's safety and he drew his gun. Okay. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but that kind of makes the point of why it's important.
Right.
By only focusing on the safety of institutions and the security of institutions, that kind of gives the message that a Jew will not really be safe unless they're in the building.
Right.
But what happens when they leave? Okay. And
Yes.
particularly for Orthodox Jews who are always identifiable, particularly if they're walking to shul, which is the case here in Columbus, where I live. Um, if you're walking down a main thoroughfare where the synagogues are, and you don't even know situational awareness, you're not looking around, you're not watching the cars go by, you're just kind of focused on, getting to shul and talking to the people you're walking with. Okay, and I see that all the time from my perspective, from where I daven. Um, you're just asking to be a target.
Right. Yeah, I think this is such an important point. Actually, last year we did have a virtual Krav Maga situational awareness training. So if people want to watch that link, please reach out to me. We have that recorded from a local Krav Maga expert. But I agree, we have to start changing the tide and empowering, especially young people who,
Yes,
might be out there, especially if they get involved with like pro-Israel activism and rallies and things like that, which we host many of those throughout the state of Rhode
right.
Island.
Our adversaries are not afraid of violence. Okay. They're used to it. It's part of their culture. They don't care what happens. Sometimes they are depending on nothing happening to them as a consequence, from law enforcement. Okay. I don't think we can afford to be victims anymore.
I agree. We need to stand up, and I think the victim mentality has gone way too far. So we need to take matters into our own hands. I also feel like this goes hand in hand with just like increased Jewish education in general,
Right.
Jewish pride, like not only learning about the tragedies, which of course have increased our resilience as a people, but there's many other contributions that we've made to society. There's so many warriors and heroes and heroines throughout Jewish history that we should encourage Jewish people to learn about because
Absolutely.
we're
Actually,
not.
for your audience today, we're doing this on Yom HaShoah. Okay. And a lot of people forget that the complete name of the day is Yom HaShoah Ugvura, which means the day of the catastrophe and of heroism. Okay. So it's affirming that, yeah, we weren't just victims. Okay. There were people among us that took up arms to defend themselves, even when they probably knew that they weren't going to be totally victorious.
Exactly. Yes, we have to add the and fighting back part for sure and teach more people how to do that. So going back to Mattathias Project, what is one of the most impactful speakers that you've been able to bring in? Like either that's made an impact on you personally or feedback you've heard from the rest of the members?
Yeah, actually, there have been several. This woman I mentioned, Claire Lopez, who's with the United West. You can people can look her up. She is just a treasure trove of information regarding Iran. We had Derek Van Orden, who is an ex-Navy SEAL congressman, very pro-Israel, was very impactful. Um, One of the most important speakers we had regarding Islam is a man by the name of Dr. Andrew Bostom, who's written many books on Islam, um, Islam and anti-Semitism. We've had him speak actually a couple times. And then there was Benjamin Kirstein who just wrote a book on self-defense, a Jewish manifesto. So we've actually had a lot of people. And again, as I mentioned, Rabbi Hausman is always, introducing us to new people. Our the programs are usually kind of what people would expect. The speaker speaks for about 30, 40 minutes, and then participants engage in comments and questions. So, it really is a lot of give and take. Um, and it's been extremely educational and extremely helpful. We're really happy to be able to offer the service and get people and we record most of our meetings and make them available to other people. We've had some of our members have said, "Can I invite so and so?" And I, you know, always open to doing that. Um,
Incredible. If somebody wants to get more information about Mattathias Project or get added to the list, what's the best way for them to do
Best
that?
way is probably to email me at rebckoz, REBCKOZ at Gmail.
Okay,
And
amazing. And I can personally attest that all the speakers I've seen have been fantastic. And then it's also just been great to be in a pro-Israel community because I don't always get to have that, every day. So it's great to have that sense of community even virtually. I did want to just comment on a couple of those names you mentioned because Rabbi Hausman, we are very close with him. He actually, his congregation is in Stoughton, Massachusetts. We try to always advertise his events on our list, but he is a conservative Jewish rabbi, but he has been incredibly pro-Israel. I mean, he really does not care about being politically correct. He does not care about, shirking his Jewish identity in any way. And in my opinion, I wish there was a lot more rabbis who are as vocally
Yeah, he's a
pro-Israel as
lion.
he
He's an
is.
absolute lion.
He's very fierce. And actually, together with him and Dr. Bostom, we did a virtual press conference last year on Muslim anti-Semitism. And, Dr. Bostom was a wealth of information because he has been monitoring the activities at one of our local mosques, the Islamic Center of Rhode Island. He was watching their weekly sermons that they were uploading to YouTube, I mean, to Facebook, and saw how much anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, rhetoric, basically anyone that's a non-believer, what would happen to them, right? And so that was very eye-opening. And so we felt it was important to hold that press conference so that, local people in Rhode Island could be aware of the hatred being spewed and also a specific false Islamophobia event that they,
Yeah,
claimed
yeah,
happened outside. And so those two individuals we've partnered with closely, and they are, they're also leading nationally, I would say, this pro-Israel movement, and also not being afraid to call out the elephant in the room, which is, Islamic extremism. We have to talk about this issue when
absolutely.
talking about Jewish safety and security.
Right. A couple things. One of the things that Dr. Bostrom points out is that there really is no difference between Islam and Islamicism or Islamism, okay? Because Islam itself teaches hatred of Jews. And it really is just a matter of does the individual Muslim believe what's being taught, and if he or she does, what are they going to do about it? Okay, which kind of means that given our experience, particularly the Jewish experience with Muslims in this country, there's no such thing as Islamophobia because a phobia is an imagined fear. And what they've shown is that we have what to be fearful of.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. When various, enough Muslims, right, including all the terrorist groups and people that believe that these terrorists are martyrs, right? That's enough of a threat already. They've
sure.
already screamed from the rooftops that they want to
Yeah,
annihilate
and
Israel and Jewish people.
unfortunately there's still Jews, and I count some lay leaders and clergy among them who are still in the kumbaya mindset.
Yes,
They want to they want to do outreach to the Muslim community. Here in town we have a congregation that just did an end of Ramadan program, and it was reported in the local Jewish newspaper and how they learned about each other's traditions, and no mention of Israel.
right.
Um, and it kind of sounds wonderful, and as I say, very kumbaya, let's all get along. But how do you trust that?
Exactly. And, people will say, well, not all Muslims, right? I'm not saying that all Muslims hate Jews or want to kill me or are our enemy. I'm not saying that. But I believe if they are not in agreement with Muslim extremism or killing Jews or annihilating Israel, then they need to speak out about that. I know there have been some advocates, for example, like Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, um, Hershawn Ali. There's other,
Yeah,
names out
yeah,
there who
right.
are trying to reform Muslim, the Muslim movement to be more, just kind of pro-American, pro-Israel and denounce violence and Sharia law. But they're few and far between those voices, and they also operate at great risk to their families. They
No
have death
question.
threats. We're
Just
actually
yeah,
trying
it's
to
not
get.
just the social ostracism. There's more to be afraid of.
Right. And so, again, I just think there's enough of it going on. And they're not just attacking the Jews, they're also attacking Christians, for example. They're slaughtering so many innocent Christians in 20 plus African countries right now, different jihadist groups. And so, it's just, the media hasn't caught up to this topic. And I don't know if they will, because, they have their own political agenda as well.
Yeah, I don't think they want
Um,
to.
yeah, I don't think they want to face the harsh realities because it doesn't fit into their kind of like hyper DEI lens view of the world, which is, a whole other issue. But just kind of going back to that, I just want to ask you, like, what are the most important issues you think that are facing the Jewish community today?
That's an excellent question. I think, again, one that I refer to, I think the fact that the non-Orthodox community um, has really gotten away from traditional beliefs and values and has substituted, again, political progressivism. Tikkun Olam, I think, it's real interesting because the phrase Tikkun Olam, first of all, when I was in rabbinical school, I never heard it. I never heard it. Okay. This became a watchword in the 1980s. Okay. Thanks to a man named Michael Lerner, who was a big progressive. And he sort of got the ball rolling of associating um, uh, leftist ideas with tikkun olam, social justice. Okay. Um, One of the things that I was taught by one of my more politically conservative professors was in Judaism, justice does not have a modifying adjective. Okay. We don't talk about social justice, um, ecological justice. We don't talk about that. There's justice and justice. That's not the way a lot of people see it. Um, it's social justice and tikkun olam, And somehow that's become like commandment number one. And
Right.
truly it's not.
And also who gets to decide what's worthy of like
Indeed.
being the focus of that social
Oh,
justice? Which
absolutely.
group is worthy, you know?
Exactly. Okay. So and again, you're making the point that when you get away from God and Torah and you start making up, what you want to, how you want to see it, that's when the religion starts to change into something else. Um, Autonomy has always been a pretty important factor in Reform Judaism. But autonomy basically means you make the rules,
Hmm.
and that's not Judaism. Okay. So if you were to ask me, well, then, Rabbi, what are you? How do you describe yourself? Not as a rabbi, but as a Jew. And I would say, I've come to accept that I am probably an Orthodox Jew because I believe the dox part. I believe in what the tradition teaches about God, about the Torah, about tradition. I may not be the most observant, okay? I try to do the best I can, but in terms of what I believe, that's probably where I fall, which makes me a maverick.
Yes, that's really amazing. And just how has that been, in your current, work in your congregation being so pro-Israel vocally? How has that manifested in maybe tensions or agreements with your
Yeah, well,
congregants?
thank God, as I mentioned before, my congregation is a lot more heterogeneous than it used to be. Um, we have people that are uh, have really come out and are not so reticent to present themselves as political conservatives, whereas it used to be they wouldn't have spoken out. I think just my being there has made them more comfortable. I will say that during the presidential election, when Springfield, where my congregation is, was the focus of some controversy regarding the Haitians. I was interviewed, and some of my comments were taken out of context, got reported in the leftist Jewish press. I became public enemy number one among Jewish leftists, and I got a hate mail from one of my congregants,
Oh,
basically telling me I should resign. I'm a hater. I'm a racist. I'm a this. I'm a that. Now, interestingly enough, this is a person who, in the 10 years that I've been in this congregation, has maybe come into the building 3 times. Okay. She's not exactly an active member.
mm,
Okay. So what I interpreted was that her feelings about me just now gave her more excuse not to be involved.
right.
Um, and there wasn't really any reason to answer her because I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere.
Right. And sometimes it's not worth it. I've also experienced that, right? Being a leader of a pro-Israel nonprofit, we've also gotten some, hateful mail and comments, whether that's on social media or through email. And sometimes when you see that someone is filled with that much hate and judgment, there's really nothing that you can say
Absolutely. And
anyways.
and and a lot of it is because when we hear people respond, the response is not, I've thought about this or I've reasoned this. It's I feel. It's
Hmm.
all about emotion. Okay. And emotion is a very, very different experience than what rational human beings should be doing,
Yes.
particularly with controversial issues.
Oh, yeah, it's so interesting you say that because I had a childhood friend of mine. We're talking about the topic of Israel the other day, and she just said, "Well, I feel like I'll probably never be supportive of Israel." And I'm like, "Well, if you're going based off feelings, right, you're not going to take time to look into any facts or maybe dig
Sure.
behind some of the headlines or maybe talk to some Israeli or Jewish people because she's non-Jewish." Then you're probably always going to feel that way. It's easy to feel when you don't know much about a topic, right? Or you're being fed maybe just only one viewpoint because of the
Right.
world that you live in. So we can all be susceptible to that no matter what our political beliefs are. You can get into an echo chamber easily with like social media, right? And so it's important to take that extra step because if you just rely on your feelings, then we're not really going to get anywhere with bridging these
Absolutely.
gaps,
Absolutely.
in
And when it
society.
comes to is reporting on Israel, and we know how some of the material is spun because it really is presented as Israel is presenting are committing war crimes, and often context is not included. I gave a sermon recently about how important context is, and I gave this example. Okay. If you read a headline that says mass man cuts sleeping woman, that's the headline. Okay. What's your immediate response? Okay. What do you assume? You assume there's a criminal, okay, that basically did a Jack the Ripper on this poor woman.
Mhm.
Okay. And you're going to have feelings about that. Okay. But then you read the story and you find out that the headline was factually true, but it's about a surgeon who was operating on a woman under anesthesia.
Right.
Mass man cut sleeping woman is a true statement. It's a true statement, but the context is totally different.
Right. No, yes, you're so right. You're so right. And that's why I think it's so important to have these educational, conversations and dialogue as much as possible. I know Camera is an organization that we also work
Right?
closely with that specializes in being a media watchdog. And so I always encourage people to check out their website, their social media, because they're constantly exposing these inaccuracies
Yeah.
in, reporting on the Middle East and Israel. And like you said, I mean, the damage could already be done if a headline comes out, people make up their own mind, even if they backtrack and change the headline or change, the article later, because sometimes they don't always have credible sources. They just are
Right.
rushing to put out the product, right? That
And
that
I
causes
would
a lot
bet
of
that
damage.
your friend who you just mentioned, um, has one source of news and
Right.
doesn't look at other sources.
Yeah. So tell us about like what, pushback or obstacles you're facing in your work. I know you mentioned that attack from the left Jewish media
Yeah.
that happened, but what other obstacles are coming up for you or maybe they're not because things are going well at your congregation and obviously Mattathias
Yeah, the
Project is about all
congregation,
Israel.
yeah, thank goodness the congregation is, I mean, this thing with the Haitians really caused a lot of problems. And I will say to the credit of my leadership, who I don't always agree with politically, it was so serious that I did offer to resign, and they said, no, we don't want that. Okay. And in terms of how we responded, they were very, very supportive. Okay.
That's good. Thank
Which,
God.
says volumes about them. Okay. Um, I still talk about current events, but I always I don't really talk about it politically. Okay. What I'm trying to talk about is Jewish values. Okay. So, for example, um, when the issue may be illegal immigrants, you know, and the left will say that, the rabbis on the left will say, the Torah says we have to love the stranger because we were strangers in the land of Egypt, and that certainly over Passover was a big theme. Okay. My response is, yeah, you're right. Okay. But when the Torah says that, it assumes that the people we are welcoming are going to be gracious and they're going to follow our customs and follow our laws, and they're not going to be problems for us. Okay. Nowhere does it say that we have to that that we have to put up with that. It's assumed, the Torah assumes that a stranger is going to acclimate to the community he's in. That's a given.
Right, right. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about with Dr. Bostom and Dr. Hausman that we're realizing, right, that like radical Islam or Islamism is not compatible with Western values.
Correct.
It's just not. Forget even us being Jews, but just us as people living in America
Right.
that are trying to uphold democratic Western, or we call them Judeo-Christian values, which is one aspect of our mission is to promote those Judeo-Christian
Right.
values, like simple things like loving your neighbor and not killing others and being honest and providing honest testimony and honoring your parents, like all of these things that seem obvious. We haven't mastered them yet in society, so we still have a lot of work to do. Forget, religious differences and political conflicts, just like our common behavior and decency and morals. A lot of that actually does come from Judaism, but we have now this influx of, oh, well, you have to treat everyone with respect and you have to honor everyone, but not if they're trying to kill us, not if they're
Sure.
burning American flags in the square, not if they're changing all of the laws, changing everything at schools, right? Like we've already seen in UK and France and other countries where they're outlawing preachers and priests from saying anything in the square, but yet, a line of devout Muslims can take up a whole plaza and pray and stop traffic if they want to,
Right.
because they're outlawing us from even being able to criticize Islam. So this is a really important issue that's above politics. It's
One
keeping
of
our
the
moral
things,
fabric together.
yeah, one of the things you kind of alluded to was Judaism is about boundaries. Okay. Um, and we have to balance compassion with justice. Okay. One of the things that I think is threatening our community now, and when I say our community, I'm talking about the American Jewish community and American society, is what has been called suicidal empathy. Okay. There's too much empathy. Okay. Judaism is not just about compassion. It's also about justice. Justice is about boundaries. Justice is about, limitations. You can't do whatever you want. You can't say whatever you want. Okay. Even if you are disenfranchised, okay, either sociologically or economically, okay, that doesn't give you the right to do anything you want. Okay. The Torah is uh, very, very clear that justice, the way it's understood in the Torah, is even if a person is poor, if they're in the wrong, they're in the wrong. Okay, and there's got to be legal consequences to that. Okay, the law doesn't get ignored just because a person is somehow um, disenfranchised. We don't we don't
Right,
we don't do that. But see, in the name of social justice, victimhood trumps everything.
right.
That's not
Yes,
that's not Judaism.
I know. And that's why, I was alarmed to also see back when the ICE stuff started happening, that was pretty much in January,
Yeah.
that our local Jewish Federation was hosting like an immigrant vigil, but with the same organizations that are, most of them aren't Jewish, but like other nonprofits in the community that also participated in a pro-Hamas rally in our city immediately after October 7th. So also like shirking, okay, so you were waving terrorist flags right after our country was invaded and we had 1,200 murders. And, but it's okay that, some of your people are being deported, so now we can stand with you. I just think that that's totally what you just said, empathetic suicide at that point.
Yep.
And it just doesn't make any sense. Some of these alliances, I think, this is speaking to a larger issue of just these establishment or legacy Jewish organizations that I think are failing us as Jewish people
Yeah.
because they're not standing up for us. We're experiencing, obviously, the numbers don't lie, increased anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, and anti-Zionism, which is all basically the same thing, just in different flavors. But what are they doing to address these issues? Instead, they're focusing on all these other social justice movements, which I'm not saying that these movements don't have merit. Of course, we do need more justice for many different groups in many different areas of our society, but to do that at the expense of Jewish safety, Jewish pride, and Jewish education, I think is a failure.
No question. Okay. But you know what? There's a history of this approach to what it means to be Jewish, and that is, um, a century ago or more, um, there were a lot of Jews that are involved in socialism and communism. Okay. And they chose to focus less on their own people in order to promote a more universal vision of humanity, and many of them basically said, I'm prepared to sacrifice my Jewishness and the Jewishness of my fellow Jews, okay, in order to create, um, this universal kumbaya community.
Hmm.
And this is just another iteration of that, I think.
Right. Is there something that you wish, I guess, people would know about Israel or about Judaism, anything about this topic that you think they don't know, they're getting
I
wrong?
wish people would just really look into and be more familiar with what Israel has done and wants to do, how it contributed to the welfare of humanity, and if necessary, compare it with what their neighbors have done, what their neighbors have contributed to the welfare of humanity. Talking about technology, medicine, intelligence in the military field, um, goodwill.
Hmm.
You don't
Agriculture
hear
too is a big one.
agriculture, absolutely. Okay. The symbol of the state of Israel is the menorah with olive branches. Okay. Olive branches obviously symbolize peace. Okay. If you look at the flag of Hamas, it's about rifles.
Yep.
Okay. That says it all.
It's about death.
It's
Exactly.
about death.
We choose life, right? We say l'chaim.
Yeah.
As
And
cliche as that
they're
sounds, we
about
choose
death.
life.
And the other thing I wish people, thank you for mentioning that, because I wish the other thing I wish people really start to understand is the people they want us to be friends, not friends with, the people that they want us to get along with, okay, do not want to get along with us. Okay. Okay. This is a fundamental difference in culture. Okay.
Mhm.
These are not a group of people that are liberals who speak Arabic or who speak Farsi. Okay. These are people who see the world and see life in very, very different terms. Very different terms. Okay. And by definition, you can't, there's not going to be coexistence.
Yeah, you
You
can't
have,
reason with terrorists, right? You
yeah.
can't reason with terrorists.
And they're proud of that. That's
Mhm.
the other thing. They're proud of it.
Right,
And they will say
exactly.
or do, I mean, their religion actually teaches them that in the name of Islam, okay, it's okay to lie, to deceive a non-believer
Right.
if the goal is to further Islam.
Yeah, and they've uncovered, right, in the UNRWA schools, these, Arab children in Gaza that are going to school, that they have like glorifying stories of suicide bombers and
Yes,
other terrorists, right? And that's what these poor, like, honestly, these poor kids like are being indoctrinated to believe this hate and glorify being a martyr by killing Jews, right? And you can even see
exactly.
them acting it out in school plays. And so
Yes.
when these cushy liberals are just saying, oh, just Israel should try more diplomacy. Israel should try being more humanitarian, right? What
Nobody ever says Hamas and Gaza should be more humanitarian. Nobody ever says.
exactly, exactly. So you're right. It's a totally different mindset that people will just really not understand that. I think Israel
It's
has obviously gone above and beyond. I mean, even the fact that they were trying to feed the enemy, what other country has done
yeah.
that after being invaded, right? And still there will be haters and
And
criticizers.
on the other side, we know that even in Germany and the countries where Nazis were in control, there were Gentiles, there were non-Jews that tried to save Jews. Okay. It's documented that didn't happen to one hostage. Okay.
Right?
Some of these hostages were being housed in the homes of regular Gazans. Okay. And to a person, they were all treated poorly.
Right. And saying, oh, the people are so poor. Well, they could have gotten money actually if they, reported where the hostages were. I think it was like maybe a $50,000 reward or something like that. So yes, there's just so much that we could go on, and I'm so glad that you are someone that is consistently, spreading the truth, bringing in
Thank you.
more like-minded people. I just wanted to ask you lastly, if you had like unlimited budget or you could reach anyone you want, who's like a dream guest that you would like to have on Mattathias Project or just in general a
A
project on
dream
this?
guest, Benjamin Netanyahu.
There you go.
Okay. And after him would be Michael Oren.
Oh, those are both good
Okay.
ones.
If I had unlimited budget, I would create different organizations to replace the legacy leadership
hmm
because
Yes,
they are failing us.
definitely. And when we say legacy, we're talking about Jewish Federation, ADL, APAC, some of these bigger groups, JNF. Um, Great. Is there anything else that you'd like to share on the topic of Israel, being Jewish, what we talked
I
about?
just want people to know that we're living in a time where every Jew is a Jew by choice. There's nothing that is forcing us to remain Jewish. And in the words of the late Kinky Friedman, this is a time where it's time for the chosen ones to choose. A lot of the articles I've written actually end with that because it's kind of the mantra now. Okay, we can go individually, we can go in any direction we want, but if we want Judaism and the Jewish people to survive and to thrive, okay, we may have to make some real difficult choices. And God forbid it should be about having to risk our lives. But we have to know that because of the slogan "Never Again," okay, God forbid it might come to that, and we just have to be prepared.
I agree.
It's not about advocating violence, it's about advocating self-defense.
I definitely agree. Well, I definitely, encourage people to email you, get involved with Mattathias Project. Like I said, I've really thoroughly enjoyed the speakers on Sunday nights. I'm proud
Thank
to
you.
be a part of that, cohort of like-minded people. It's also just great to know that I'm not alone in this fight. You're not alone in this fight. There are people who really care about, the future of the Jewish people, right? And also the future of our country, the future of America. So this podcast is not just talking about Israel, but these are issues that are facing
Amen.
Western
Yep. Yep.
civilization. So thank you for being on the right side of
Thanks for having
history.
me.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
so much.
Be well.
Thank you. I'm Israel. Hi.
I'm Israel Chai.